It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and I'm kind of excited because we have data. There's depressing data, but we have data. And if you know anything about me, I love data. I love getting out of the area of subjectivity and into numbers that we can crunchy, delicious crunch. For those of you who were at the workshop on the weekend, thank you so much. We met attendance expectations. The format, everybody else thought it was great. I want to tweak it because I'm a positive perfectionist. But thank you, everybody who took a chance on it, like the ABBA song. It was great. So if you want to be part of future things, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for somebody who can't afford it, kofi.com/LeannaK, and you can go to nottherapyshow.com to join the mailing list. We're still getting that up and running. That's not quite ready to go, but if you can, nottherapyshow.com, join the mailing list. We'd appreciate the numbers as we get that up and running. There's a lot of legalities with a mailing list, and we have to be super careful because of anti-spam laws I agree with. Okay, so today we are going through the Trevor Project data that just came out. And it is interesting and kind of disturbing, but not totally surprising. My takeaway from the numbers is that the negative messaging, the focusing on the struggle and all the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation and the inordinate emphasis on trans women has had some impacts that pop up fairly obviously in the data that show we need to be supporting people of color and trans men more than the messaging has. Why am I saying we? I'm not part of everything. That was just like inclusive language. I'm not part of any group. I do my own thing. And you know, we talk about the trans women or women stuff a lot. We don't talk about the trans men or men stuff nearly enough. And these numbers show it. So let's dig in. Bless the Trevor Project for doing this. So this is specifically young people, right? People between the ages of 13 to 24. Obviously, they're really getting nailed lately across the United States. So this is US data, not Canadian data, not UK data, US. They asked them to answer some questions, but also asked respondents to describe a world where all LGBTQ people are accepted. And so this is what we've got. Key findings. Why is my picture not there? That's okay. We will figure that out. 41% of LGBTQ young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. Young people who are transgender, non-binary, and or people of color reported higher rates than their peers. 41% seriously considered attempting. So thoughts, not action. Okay. 41% still not great. Okay, to put it lightly. And they do baseline against cisgender men and women later, so we'll get to that. 56% of LGBT young people who wanted mental health care in the past were not able to get it. No surprise there. This is why I do stuff like this. Trans and non-binary young people who reported that all the people they live with respect their pronouns reported lower rates of attempting suicide. Duh, shocker, but we still need the data. Fewer than 40% of LGBTQ young people found their home to be LGBTQ affirming in the US. Probably not surprising. Roughly half of transgender and non-binary young people found their school to be gender affirming, and those who did reported lower rates of attempting suicide. That's a very, very important number. because it lowers rates. It lowers rates. If we care about the children, we want accepting environments. If we really are thinking about the kids, right? A majority of LGBTQ young people reported being verbally harassed at school because people thought they were LGBTQ. That hasn't changed. Nearly 1 in 3 LGBTQ young people said their mental health was poor most of the time or always due to anti-LGBTQ policies and legislation. Now, nearly 1 in 3 said it was poor most of the time or always. 30%, right? But nearly 2 in 3 LGBTQ young people said that hearing about potential state or local laws banning people from discussing LGBTQ people at school made their mental health a lot worse. So what that tells me is with youth, and this is consistent with a lot of other stuff in youth work, we need to fight the legislation, but we have to not make the fight against the legislation a young person's problem. And again, this is up to the age of 24. I extend this. Some people 28 years old, okay? But that's the thing. We got to fight this, but we got to not make it a young person's problem. What we got to say to them is, we got this. We will support you. It may get temporarily rough, but we're here from you. You know, we got you. That's the message. Not we have to fight. This nobody cares messaging that I'm seeing among some trans activists. It's like, oh God, no, please don't. Because of this, you don't want to stress the nobody cares. You want to stress people do care, and we are fighting for you. Just be a young person. Just deal with your life. No one is required to be an activist. Anybody can hold a sign. So now we're getting into mental health and suicide risk, and YouTube's probably going to smack me for this, but I don't care. It's important. We did the 41%, blah, blah, blah. 41% seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. 14% of LGBTQ young people attempted suicide in the past year. Now, big discrepancy, sure, but that's, the breakdowns here are what I was like, brr? The biggest cohort is that ages 13 to 17, the group that forces in the U.S. are actively trying to deny care to. You see the rates reduce at the 18 to 24. Now, these considered way too high, but 17%, way, 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 way too high. So we gotta look at this group. Everything that's going on in the U.S. is no good, very bad regarding this. Okay, this is overall LGBTQ young people, right? But then when we go down to the racial breakdowns, 22% of Native and Indigenous young people, 18% of Middle Eastern North African young people, 17% of multiracial young people, 16% of Black young people, 15% of Latinx young people, Latin, I say, 10% of Asian American Pacific Islander. So AAPI is is less than white people, but by 1%. Everybody else is higher. And that's very important. I don't want to speculate on why, because that Indigenous group, there's so much going on there that, yeah, I don't want to be a stupid colonizer. Sexual orientation. So I think it's interesting that pansexual people are the highest, because pansexuality is linked to the whole trans issue, right? We're the ones that are trans inclusive. in what our brain goes yes to, right? So that makes sense. Um, the questioning is really high too, which I guess nobody should be surprised by. But that's a statistically significant increase between it's more acceptable to be, to pick a team versus gay or lesbian. And people will be like, what's the damn difference between bisexual, queer, pansexual, what's the difference? Well, it's that trans inclusive element, right? That we get called chasers by people, which people don't understand why that's a rejection. But I got dogpiled on Twitter for that one, so that'll be one for another day. So gender identity, here is the big one. Okay. We obviously see a big difference between transgender men and everyone else. And this confirms some things about the messaging for me regarding exclusion and erasure of trans men. There has been so much focus on bathrooms and women's sphere, that cis women's sphere, and not all cis women, just TERFs. There's been so much focus on that trans men have gotten left out. And the fact that, non-binary, again, statistical tie, 1% either way. But this number for trans men, we can do something about that. We need to be more inclusive. And one of the things some trans men I've talked to have mentioned to me, and this was a really interesting point, is that this idea that men can get pregnant too is dysphoria triggering. And so it's well-meaning, but, for people that are horrified at the idea that a thing their bodies, according to their brains, aren't supposed to do, that's horrifying, and making them contemplate it and showing cartoon pictures of it. Yeah, it makes complete sense that would trigger thoughts of dysphoria. And so all this inclusive, prenatal clinic language is backfiring. Tough problem, but something we can't just dismiss. That's very real. This is what happens when you actually talk to people, right? And that's not the only issue. Transmasculine erasure is a real thing. But, we can't deny it's double for trans women, the numbers, as it is for cisgender women. Okay? And I'm not ignoring this side of the chart. It's just, these are people, that are still around to talk about it. This chart does not hear from the people that aren't. But, yeah, half here, right? And these are young people. These are people who, if we can just get them, one more step, we can do a lot of good. So let's do the good while we can. Now we get to, I broke down the numbers with racial demographics. Look at the numbers for with considering with the non-white, non-AAPI. It's so, America's so odd that they lump in Pacific Islander and Asian American. But I want to jump to the regional tab, because these numbers are not as divergent as I think a lot of people would think. Like, yes, the South is higher. The South and Midwest are higher than the Northeast, but not by much. Now, the attempts, again, you would think that since the South and Midwest are so much more anti-LGBTQ, you would see much more. But what this tells me is that all the focus on it, all the talking about it is affecting youth in the entire country. And I mean, yes, some of it is definitely seeping into federal politics. And I remember being that age, and you can't expect a teen to think things through and challenge emotional reasoning the same way we can an adult, right? And so what this tells me is all this focus on the fight is impacting LGBTQ plus youth in states where they are more protected. Now, more does not mean they are. And this is where we get into, cities tend to be more racially diverse than rural areas. And that statistic about the home not being affirming and all that racial data, this is complex. And what these numbers tell me is, one, yeah, we really need a pivot to positive messaging aimed at young people. We can't afford to panic in public because they're watching. And this is true of youth. This is why I focus on video games, because young men talk to me. And it's always like, they're like, oh, you like video games? Like, oh, you like Mario or something. It's like, yeah, what do you play? I play like God of War and Dark Souls, Ghost of Tsushima. Like, all of a sudden the whole thing shifts, and then they go, what's your favorite character? And I'll be like, well, okay, I love Kratos, man. But, you start talking, and then you start talking about strategies and all that stuff. I said, okay, on this boss, where are you now in the game? On this boss, do this, this, and this. And they're like, you are cool, right? Instead of being, what you're doing is rotting your brain and all that stuff. It's like, no, your shit's my shit. I'm down. That makes a young person feel accepted. Instead of flipping out on somebody over, oh my God, this is so bad. Why are you watching Andrew Tate? Why am I Cartman on this, right? But that and a bunch of other things that we think we have to sanitize everything for youth, and we can't. We never could. Even before the internet, kids got into Playboys. Kids, watched pay TV porn. There's only so much you can protect them from the world. You have to help them process and navigate the world. And when you seem terrified, they get more afraid. When you're saying, look, it's hard right now, but I got you. You can always come to me. You can always talk to me. And please come and talk to me. But, it's better that you come and talk to me than do something you might not be able to undo, regarding self-harm. And then check in. But I do definitely think we need people like Nicole Maines, who are Laverne Cox, who are out there living their lives. And yeah, they have very scary moments. They're allowed to be full people, but they're out there doing things and achieving things. The stuff Nicole Maines has done with Dreamer is just, oh, girl, that's so good. right? Let young people see a future. And then people like, the guy who's on, and he's not on it nearly enough, 911 Lone Star, trans actor, Brian Michael, ah, um, the guy who plays the guy from Chicago. You know, him just being out there, acting, being in things, being a dude. There was a great line where, you know, Rob Lowe's character's a putz. And there was a moment where he said to, Paul's the character's name. He said, I don't get women. And Paul goes, me either, man. And it was just the most normal thing in the world. And that allows young people to see a future where they are accepted. And all this culture war stuff where people just erupt with everything is not good for young people who are watching and paying attention. Now, we can't do anything about the culture war. It has a half-life. I do believe it's in decline. Data indicates people are getting sick of it. But we got a few more years, right, of riding this out. But we can help them feel safer. And we do that through positive messaging. We do it through realistic positive messaging. But positive messaging, modeling resilience, being honest about concerns, being honest about fears, but also how we are working through those fears. And that's what boycott campaigns and really, really dire messaging, focus on death, focus on, you know, murders, things like that. According to these numbers, that's not serving youth. I also think that the intense demonization of men by the gender critical side is not helping trans boys or cis boys, though. I mean, the struggle of adolescent boys does not come out in suicide statistics. It comes out in other ways. Fighting, other self-harming behaviors, you know, problem drug use, alcohol, vaping, that kind of stuff. So this isn't the complete picture. It's a beginning of the data. But definitely we have to be more inclusive to trans dudes. I know there are trans dudes that watch this channel. I greatly appreciate you. Obviously, you guys have taught me a lot about, you know, my own blind spots and not being so gung-ho on inclusion that it isn't, oh yeah, right. You know, dysphoria happens to guys too. Oops. These are not easy problems with messaging. And that's why I do Manly Mondays. That messaging is talking to and about men. That solves the problem in a lot of ways, right? Because then they can watch that, and I make it trans inclusive with Manly Monday, because trans dudes are dudes, trans men are men. I mean, the minute you're around a trans man, it's like, yeah, that's a guy. Everything reads guy. It's so simple on that level, but so many people don't know trans people. And so they don't get to have that experience of, this is clearly somebody who says they are who they say they are. And there's got to be a way to get that experience more broadly. I'm going to link to Two Vets and a Civilian over on Akila's channel so that you guys can see that. There's a lot more about the messaging with trans people with Akila and Jerry and me. And if you're interested more in this content, check it out. I have a ton of fun with those two. They are awesome. And for now, I'll just wrap. Yeah, I'm gonna keep in mind that we have to be more hopeful. I'm gonna pivot on social media accordingly. So help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching and be well.